So, developing strong thesis statements. Today, we're focusing on developing strong thesis statements. The thesis statement is one of the most critical parts of an essay. It serves as the foundation for the argument you're building and directs the flow of your entire paper. A strong thesis sets up your argument clearly, is specific enough to guide the essay, and is debatable, meaning it can be argued for or against. What is a thesis statement? A thesis statement is a single sentence, usually placed at the end of the introduction, that presents your main argument or claim. It tells your readers exactly what your essay is going to be about. The purpose: the thesis statement provides clarity for your reader. It explains the central point of your essay and sets up the structure of how you'll argue or prove that point throughout the paper. And I suppose that your narrative essays do have thesis statements and the thesis statements about your life, but I think that in that type of writing, the thesis statement is kind of like, secondary. You're writing a story about your life, and in creative writing, which is I find the narrative essay to be a little bit more on the side of creative writing, that you're not really talking about a thesis statement, right? Whereas in academic writing, the thesis statement is kind of like the main point. And when you write a strong thesis statement, you setting yourself up to be able to write a lot about an essay or about any topic, right? Whereas in a narrative essay, you write about your life, so you don't have to have pose a question about yourself, right? You're just writing about yourself. Example of a weak thesis statement: pollution is bad. This is weak because it's too broad, general, and non-specific. It doesn't suggest an argument or direct the readers to what aspect of pollution the essay will cover. For example, a strong thesis statement: industrial pollution in urban areas has led to significant health problems, which should be addressed through stricter environmental regulations. This is strong because it specifies the type of pollution, where it occurs, and what the consequences are, while also proposing a solution: stricter regulations. It can be argued for or against. Qualities of a strong thesis statement: it's clear and concise. Clarity: a good thesis statement is clear, avoids vague or broad language. It's specific about the topic you're addressing. Conciseness: a strong thesis should not be a long sentence packed with too many details. Keep it focused on one main idea. For example, social media impacts teenagers' self-esteem negatively. It's clear and concise without unnecessary details or broad generalizations. It's arguable. A thesis should present an argument, not just a statement of fact or an observation. Your thesis needs to make a claim that can be debated or discussed. What makes it arguable? Someone should be able to disagree with your thesis. If everyone agrees with it, then it's just a fact and not an argument. For example, social media has a negative impact on teenagers' self-esteem. This is arguable because one could argue that social media helps boost self-esteem by promoting connectivity and communication. It's specific. A strong thesis statement narrows down your topic to something manageable. It shouldn't be so broad that you can't cover it in a single essay, nor should it be so specific that there's nothing to discuss. For example, avoid vague terms like good, bad, or important. That kind of goes into what we were talking about with word choice, right? A weak thesis: education is important. Strong thesis: access to education improves economic opportunities for underprivileged communities by providing them with the necessary skills for high-paying jobs. So notice how the strong thesis gets specific about who's affected and how. It provides a roadmap for the essay. Your thesis should give a hint about how your essay will be structured. It tells the reader what to expect in terms of argumentation and evidence. Roadmap thesis: stricter regulations on factory emissions, increased public awareness campaigns, and government incentives for renewable energy are necessary to combat climate change. This thesis shows the three main points that will be discussed in the essay, providing a clear direction. So the roadmap thesis: stricter regulations on factory emissions, increased public awareness campaigns, and government incentives for renewable energy are necessary to combat climate change. This thesis shows the three main points that will be discussed in the essay, providing a clear direction. It reflects the scope of the essay. Your thesis should match the scope of your paper. If your thesis is too broad, you won't be able to explore the topic thoroughly. If it's too narrow, there may not be enough to discuss. Scope: think about the length of your essay. For example, if you're writing a 5-page paper, your thesis should reflect a topic that can be adequately covered in that length. That's just what I was talking about a second ago, right? Like, you want to choose something that fits the amount of space you need to fill up. So you don't want to choose a giant topic for a a 5-page paper, right? You want to kind of narrow that down so you can actually answer the question that you're asking in your thesis statement. It's what everybody loves, right? Editing and revising. The number one, that's why everybody signs up for English, right? Editing and revising. Yeah, that's what I thought. Welcome. Today we're shifting our focus from writing narratives to an equally important part of the writing process, editing and revising. Many people think writing ends when you finish the first draft, but actually that's just the beginning. Revising and editing help transform a good draft into a polished, well-crafted piece of writing. These steps improve clarity, coherence, and style, and they help to eliminate errors that could distract readers from your message. Why revising and editing are important. Writing is a process, and it's rare for a first draft to be perfect. Your initial draft is where you get your own ideas down, but it's through revising and editing that you refine those ideas, improve the structure and clarity for your argument or story. Revising. Revising focuses on the big picture. Does your writing flow logically? Is it your argument or narrative clear and compelling? Do you provide enough evidence or detail to support your main points? In editing, focuses on the small details. Are there any grammar, punctuation, or spelling mistakes? Does each sentence make sense? Are you using concise or effective language? Together, revising and editing are crucial for producing your best possible work. So the big difference here, everyone, is that when we're talking about revising, we're talking about, again, let's go back to the thesis statement. You might want to revise your thesis statement. You might have to revise the order your thesis statement is in. You may have to remove a paragraph because you find that it doesn't actually support your thesis, right? That you've written something that doesn't work. So that's what we're talking about with revising. With editing, we're talking about grammar, maybe run-on sentences. You got some pronouns and vocabulary you might want to change up, right? So that's the big broad difference there is, small details versus the big picture in the big part of the essay, right? The overall structure of an essay versus small run-on sentences and whatnot. Revising, focusing on the big picture. Let's begin by looking at revising, which is about making sure your content is strong. When revising, ask yourself, is the thesis or main idea clear? Every piece of writing should have a main idea that the reader can easily identify. In essays, this is usually the thesis statement. In a narrative, it's the central theme or purpose of the story. Ask yourself, does my thesis make a clear, arguable point? Does every part of my writing support or relate to this main idea? Again, if you have a thesis, and again, this has happened to me many times where I've been writing a paper and I found that one of my paragraphs just doesn't fit with the rest of it, right? Like this doesn't add to my argument and maybe that has to go, right? It just is confusing or it's just information that doesn't add to anything. Is the organization effective? Your writing should flow logically from one point to the next. A common issue is jumping from one idea to another without proper transitions or explanations. Ask yourself, are my ideas presented in a logical order? Do I use transitions to guide the reader smoothly from one idea to the next? So at the end of every paragraph, you should have a transition sentence, right? That transitions you into the next point in your paper. And also, if you have something in your introductory paragraph or in your thesis statement, and let's go back to, we're talking about technology and education. So you say Brightspace is going to be the second thing you're talking about. But if that ends up being the third thing in your essay, you might just have to move it, okay? Have to move that idea. And that's revision versus just editing. And sometimes that's like just a common mistake, right? That happens to everybody. And these days, it's not that hard to fix. Are your paragraphs focused and well developed? Each paragraph should have a clear topic sentence and stay focused on one idea. Make sure you provide enough detail, explanation, and support for your points. Ask yourself, does each paragraph have a clear focus? Do I include enough evidence, examples, or details to fully develop my idea? I was telling my live students the other day something I really like to do. And this is obviously just tips and advice, but I like to use a quote in nearly every paragraph I'm going to write, especially on a paper like this, especially in my English 101 class. Because if you're using a lot of quotes, that's going to make sure that you're hitting the page limit and the source requirement, right? So I like to save my sources whenever I look anything up. I like to save a lot of quotes, and I like to put those quotes right in, right? So that makes sure that you're going to have enough detail and explanation a lot of times. Because a lot of times if you use a quote, all you're then doing is talking about that quote in that paragraph. So you might have an idea, use a quote, and then explain the quote. And that, I just find that a good way to get to the 3 to 5 pages requirement or whatever it may be, right? Using quotes. I just think it's very helpful. Do I maintain a consistent tone and style? Consistency in tone and style is crucial for keeping your readers engaged. Shifting from formal or informal language or changing your tone abruptly can confuse your reader. Is my tone appropriate for my audience and purpose? Am I using consistent language and style throughout? I think that this is not as big of an issue. I don't see a lot of this. I don't see a lot of people. I've graded a lot of these papers over the years now. People aren't just like switching their tone and style. I think that would be actually pretty difficult to do, right? Like you just have a tone and style that you probably use all the time anyways, and you're not just going to switch that halfway up, right? I mean, it would be difficult for you to do. So that's less of an issue, but just keep that in mind. And then we got editing, focusing on the details. Now let's move on to editing, which is about making sure your writing is technically sound. When editing, focus on grammar and punctuation. Errors in grammar and punctuation can distract your readers and make your writing seem less professional. Common mistakes: subject-verb agreement, verb tense shifts, misplaced modifiers, and comma splices. Sentence clarity. Make sure sentence is clear, easy to understand. Long, complicated sentences can confuse your reader, while short, choppy sentences can make your writing feel disjointed. Ask yourself, can I simplify this sentence? Are there unnecessary words or phrases that I can remove? Word choice. Strong, precise word choice is essential for making your writing clear and engaging. Avoid vague or overly complex words. Ask yourself, am I using the best words to convey my ideas? Are there any vague or redundant words I can replace? And then consistency in formatting. Your writing should follow a consistent format, especially when it comes to headlines, citations, margins, and font. Ask yourself, is my formatting consistent throughout the piece? Have I followed the required guidelines for this assignment? It's APA here. Revising versus editing, what's the difference? Revising is about improving your content. It involves rethinking your ideas, reorganizing paragraphs, adding detail, and making your argument or story stronger. Editing is about correcting errors in your writing. It involves fixing grammar, punctuation, spelling, and formatting mistakes. A good way to approach this process is to revise first, then edit. Start by looking at the overall structure and content of your piece, and then move on to smaller details. Common mistakes to look out for. Let's take a look at some of the common mistakes that writers often overlook. For example, we got run-on sentences and sentence fragments. This is what I was just talking about, right? A run-on sentence occurs when two independent clauses are connected without proper punctuation. On the other hand, a sentence fragment is an incomplete sentence, missing a subject or a verb. Fixing tip. Break long sentences into shorter ones and make sure each sentence has a subject and a verb. Vague pronoun references. Pronouns like it, this, or they should refer clearly to a specific noun. If it's unclear what the pronoun is referring to, your reader may get confused. Fixing tip. Replace unclear pronouns with the specific nouns they're referring to. Wordiness. Avoid using unnecessary words or phrases. Your writing should be concise and to the point. Fixing tip. Look for phrases like in order to or due to the fact that and simplify them to and because. Overuse of passive voice. While passive voice isn't wrong, it can make your writing less direct. Use active voice whenever possible to make your sentences clearer. Fixing tip. Change sentences from passive to active. For example, instead of the ball was thrown by John, write John threw the ball. Revising and editing are essential parts of the writing process to help you turn your ideas into polished, effective writing. By focusing on both the big picture, revising, and the small details, editing, you can significantly improve the clarity, structure, and quality of your writing. Remember, writing is a process, and every step brings you closer to a stronger final draft. Exigency. Again, I think that this was a word I did not know when I started teaching this class. It was something I had to learn, and the concept is not very difficult. It's just a big word, okay? Exigency refers to the urgency or need that prompts a writer to compose a text. It's the driving force behind why the writer feels compelled to address a specific issue, question, or problem. For example, imagine a community is facing rising pollution levels. A concerned citizen might feel an exigency to write an op-ed advocating for clearer environmental policies. The exigency is the pressing need to address the problem of pollution. Why it's important. Exigency is a crucial concept in rhetorical situations because it shapes the context in which communication takes place. Understanding the why behind a text can help readers and writers alike see the significance of the argument being made. Exploring exigency in different contexts. Academic writing. In an academic context, exigency often emerges from gaps in research, new discoveries, or current societal challenges. Scholars write because there is a pressing need to explore, clarify, or challenge ideas. For example, a research paper on the impact of social media on mental health might be driven by the exigency of addressing rising concerns about its effects on young people. Professional writing. In professional writing, exigency can be the need to solve a problem, address business opportunities, or respond to new policies. For example, a company might write a memo or report in response to new government regulations, explaining how their operations will change to comply with the law. Creative writing. In creative writing, exigency often stems from a desire for self-expression or to address a social or cultural issue. For example, a novelist might write a story to highlight social justice issues such as racial inequality or climate change. I just came up with a brand new joke while I was reading this one for my English 100 the live students is exigency in due dates. It's pretty good. So when evaluating exigency, ask the following questions. What is the driving force behind the text? This is the problem or issue the writer feels compelled to address. Hint, look for a sense of urgency in the introduction or thesis. Why does this issue matter now? Timing is crucial to understand exigency. It often relates to current events or situations that create a need for immediate action or reflection. Example, during a pandemic, there's an exigency for healthcare, reforms, or public health messaging. What's the desired outcome? Writers often have an intended purpose or action they hope their writing will lead to. Exigency drives not just the text itself, but also the desired change or solution. For example, in political speeches, the exigency might be to motivate voters to support a candidate or a cause. How exigency shapes writing and argumentation. Exigency shapes the purpose of the writing. If there's no urgent need or driving force, the writing can feel flat or unmotivated. Writers with a clear sense of exigency have a defined goal to inform, persuade, or call to action. Tone and language. Exigency often influences the tone of the text. In writing with strong exigency, the language may be urgent, passionate, or authoritative. Writers use specific word choices and emotional appeals to convey the seriousness of the issue. For example, in calls for action on climate change, writers may use alarming data or emotional appeals about the future of the planet to drive home the exigency of the problem. Audience engagement. Exigency also informs how writers engage with their audience. A writer must convey not only their sense of urgency, but also help the audience understand why they should care. For example, in advertisements, companies create a sense of exigency by saying, limited time offer or act now. Exigency in argumentative essays. In academic argumentative writing, exigency can play a key role in the introduction. Writers often introduce their topic by explaining why the issue matters right now, giving the reader a clear sense of urgency. How to create exigency. To create a sense of exigency in your writing, identify a current issue or problem related to your topic. Explain why this issue matters now, focusing on the consequences of inaction. Use specific evidence that highlights the immediate relevance of your argument, statistics, recent events, or expert quotes. Appeal to emotions or logic to strengthen the urgency of your argument. Example: in an essay about healthcare reform, a student could create exigency by citing recent statistics on the rising costs of medical care and the impact on low-income families. Exigency in writing for social change. Exigency is often the heart of writing for social justice or advocacy. Writers feel a moral obligation to address societal wrongs, and they use their work to push for changes. A historical example: Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail was driven by a deep sense of exigency. He wrote the letter to respond to criticisms from white clergy and to explain the urgency of taking direct action against racial injustice. The letter's exigency was clear. The time for waiting was over, and the need for civil rights reform was immediate. Challenges of writing without clear exigency. Lack of focus. Writing that lacks clear exigency often seems unfocused or disjointed, without compelling reason behind it. The argument may feel weak or unmotivated. Reduced impact. Readers are less likely to be persuaded by writing that doesn't make it clear why the issue matters. Without exigency, it's difficult to convince an audience to care about the argument. Reflecting on exigency in your writing. Reflect on your own writing process. What motivates you to write about your topics? Reflect on the exigency behind the choice of topic in essays. Why does the issue matter now? Think about how you're creating a sense of urgency in your arguments and whether they're convincing to the audience to take the issue seriously. What do you hope your writing will accomplish? Help students think about how their writing could lead to change or influence opinions on how exigency plays a role in achieving that goal. In conclusion, understanding exigency in writing. In any form of writing, whether academic, professional, or creative, exigency is the why behind the words. It's the driving force that propels a writer to act, speak out, or inform others. By recognizing exigency, both writers and readers can better understand the importance of communication and the impact it can have on real-world issue. Identify exigency in your own writing, and in the text you analyze, ask yourselves why the issue matters and how urgency can make your writing more effective.